you're speaking to relatives, talking to so many people that refuse to acknowledge that Trump tried to overturn the last election, or alternatively refuse to acknowledge that it's very clear it was not stolen. What would you say? Like, what is your go-to pitch whenever you speak to like kind of that standard, like well-meaning family member who just doesn't get it?
Catch you on the other side of the Civil War. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, it's delusional. Yeah. The fact that, like, you want the left to take ownership over, like, some random fucking pet project or some, you know, trans person who shouldn't have been trans, and you guys are responsible for this and blah, blah, but they won't even acknowledge, like, the reality of what's happened in past events. It's like, this is fucking, it's a joke. It's an actual fucking joke.
Right. Right. I mean, I suppose the evidence is just in the court cases, right? I mean, that's what I always point to. It's like, well, you know, y'all lose they come out like every week and they're like undeniable evidence.
The problem is that none of them believe this. Don't stop fucking doing that. Don't do that. You're doing it and Pisco does it and everybody does it. Stop pretending like they're making real arguments. They're not. It's that Voltaire quote or whatever where they delight in like playful argument. They don't give a fuck about any of this, right? A conservative will tell you, oh, you can indict a ham sandwich. Okay. Oh, a conviction? Yeah. Well, the courts are rigged. And then they'll come out and they'll show you a fucking affidavit from some state court in a case that wasn't even filed, and they'll pretend it's good as gold. Okay, they don't give a fuck about the standards for any of this shit. Oh, is it conviction? Was it bad? Well, I don't know. Was my guy convicted or was their guy convicted? Oh, well, when they convict their guys, that Hunter Biden case, that was 100% good that they convicted him. I'm glad. All the Trump ones though, those are totally phony and bullshit and bogus. Right. The Trump impeachment is bullshit. I can't even believe they would try that. The Biden impeachment is good. I can't believe the House isn't voting on it. It's evidence of corruption. Like, there's no consistency whatsoever. Well, there is. Right. I'm so sorry. I fucking lied because I'm an idiot. There is consistency. The consistency is just, if it's on Trump's side, it's always good. And if it supports Trump, it's always good. And if it's against Trump, it's always bad. And if it's not on his side, it's always bad. That's the only consistency. Don't ever play into the conservative delusion that there's any other type of argument that they're proffering there, because they never are. It's always bullshit. Sorry.
Well,
no, one of the things that Micah was touching on, and because I don't know, part of me feels like this is going to be one, like a lot of this stuff is one in a decentralized way. Like, don't get me wrong, like your narrative on when you're going after these influencers, these people that have mega platforms, like that's absolutely the way I think you should go for it. I'm thinking of like when I'm talking to like my dad or like a friend of mine, like, you know, they don't really have a deep or rich understanding of all the nuance here. And I feel like if you can kind of put some really clear evidence in front of them and say, look, this is bullshit. The thing that you just watched on TikTok the other day. And here's some court cases that you can look at or some evidence. I think those people could be won over. And that's really what I'm curious for you. I mean, for me, it's like the fake elector scheme, I think, is like the clearest example of Trump trying to subvert the election. But I'm curious as to like, in those types of conversations, do you feel like there's just any piece of information that if you put it in front of somebody that is able to be moved, it's just super clear?
I'm in the influencer world, so I'm like arguing with people online. So my takes are a lot more doomer than what a normal person should be. I'm so sorry. I think that if you can get in front of a person and show them, people like Candace Owens and Tim Pool should legitimately be stripped of their citizenship and deported to a fucking island. I'm not joking. I'm not joking when I say that. Joe Rogan, I'm like 50-50 on, okay? But if you can get enough evidence, and it has to be an abundance of, a lot of evidence in front of a person, and like have an open mind and not be combative, and you're friendly and like you have a whole ass conversation. The problem is it's not the fault necessarily of most conservatives, right? Are you guys both atheists?
Agnostic atheist, yeah.
If you heard God talking to you in your head right now, would you assume that it was really God, or would you assume that you're like going crazy?
Honestly, even if I was a Christian, I would not assume that God was just talking to me.
Yeah, that's like, it's an issue. It's actually a really strong. I'm a big atheist, but it's a really strong challenge to an atheist. It's like, oh, okay, you believe in God, right? It's like, yeah, of course I would if I had some evidence for it. Okay, well, let's say that God comes down, appears in front of you, and talks to you. Do you believe in God now? Well, no, I'd probably assume I'm going insane. Okay, well, what if your friend comes in and he's talking to your friend? I'm like, it's probably more likely that I'm dreaming. That God actually comes out, right? Well, at some point you realize, okay, holy, I'm actually so into this like materialist, physicalist, atheist world. I don't know if I actually could ever be shown evidence of God existing. And the issue with conservatives is they built up such an epistemically powerful echo chamber that, like, okay, well, look at these court docs. Well, the courts, they're rigged. Okay, well, what about when, like, the people in Congress, really? Politicians, congressmen? Okay, well, even people like McCarthy, he's a rhino now. We don't trust him anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about like when even the Supreme Court ruled it, the courts, the ones that wouldn't even hear Texas v. Pennsylvania, and they didn't even look into the evidence. Trump's already told me that those are corrupt. Okay, well, fuck, like you're like depending on how strong they're in it, like every single evidence piece you show them is always furthering whatever thing they believe in. There's no way to pull them out. You can't show them or do anything. They're trapped, but they are. You can pull them out. You just have to try harder. I'm Doomer. I'm sorry. I'm online. Okay, I deal with.
No. It's good. I understand why you would be in that mindset. I don't blame you for that at all. I'm from the deep south, so I'm surrounded by Trump supporters all the time. I've got some of them in my family, right? So I'm thinking about like how do you make those compelling narratives that can maybe pull those people away. And Mike, you may want to chime in on this. One of the groups that I really appreciate right now is Sarah Longwell from the Bulwark and the work that the Republican Accountability Project is doing, because what they're basically doing is they're giving Republicans like an anti-Trump identity, but they're not forcing them to be Democrats. So they're allowing people that off-ramp. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work that they're doing, but I mean, I'm convinced that like they're basically putting out all these ads that are like, hey, I voted for Trump for 3 times, but after January 6th.
3 times.
Or 2 times, sorry. Yeah, I voted for him twice. You can vote in a primary. There's my 3 times.
Got him.
But, he's basically giving them an identity, saying, look, January 6th was really bad. They're running these ads in all these swing states. And I think it's really, really important work. And I'm convinced center-right voters, if you can peel enough of them away in these swing states, you can win. You can defeat Trumpism, at least this time. I think it's existential in this moment that people of our political persuasion find a way to crack the code to pull people out of these fringe ideologies and back into normalcy. So I'm curious as to, just in the broad strokes, you touched on this a little bit, but how do you feel like we can get better at doing that? Just in the broad strokes, like anything that you found that just works or doesn't work?
Treat conservatives like they deserve to be treated. Treat them like children. When they say stupid shit, they need to be called out and held to account for these things, and they can't be allowed to walk out. There is no reasonable conversation to have with a conservative who won't live in reality, and people shouldn't pretend to do that anymore. Find other people to bring on and have the conversation with. It's just ridiculous. And then if that fails and we end up splitting, I think I'm also in favor of, I'd vote yes on this. Let's split the country in 2, and we'll go 20 years. Okay, all the MAGA dipshits can go to one side, and all the other people can go to the other side, and we'll see in 20 years where we're at, and then whoever's doing better, you get to rule the other country, and the other side loses the ability to vote for a generation. You. And we'll just do that. We'll see how, when you have people like Alex Jones as the head of your science department, when people like Joe Rogan are the heads of your media and cultural centers, when your Giuliani's and your Sidney Powell's are the heads of your Department of Justice, we'll see what you guys can do. We'll see what you accomplish. We'll see what you get done. And, if your country sucks shit in 20 years, if you end up being a massive drain like all the red states are and the blue states are right now economically, yeah, if you end up being that, then in 20 years you just lose your right to have a saying things, and you just sit down and shut the fuck up and let everybody else try to move the country forward. Because right now it's like trying to drive the Titanic with 7 boat anchors.
I mean, when you look at the metrics from red states, I think you're objectively correct. And RFK, as in charge of like
vaccines,
anything related to health, is a horrifying prospect. Absolutely horrifying prospect. Okay, well, listen, we'll try to moderate.
RFK, that's the guy who is crying recently because he's trying to get his name back on the ballot in states that will hurt Democrats, right? Supporting the same party that was crying about playing games with the ballot before and saying it was anti-democratic, right? Just checking, right? That RFK, that's one you're talking about?
Yep, New York. I just saw that article like a couple days ago.
Gotcha. The guy who had brain worms that died of starvation in his head? I remember that guy. Okay.
the guy who has like 5 different dead animals in each week.
The chainsaw of the humpback whale and traumatizing his kids. What a great role model.